This video, we will introduce the jQuery example part 2. Ajax is simply the business of making asynchronous requests to the server. By asynchronous, we mean that the request is taking place in the background, out of sight of the user interface. When we're coding an Ajax application, we're only spending a small fraction of our time making asynchronous calls to the server and processing the response. Now let's look at the basic example of the glue of Ajax. We're going to be taking a look at the JavaScript file function.js. First, by calling our document ready, we specify our anonymous function to execute when the DOM is fully loaded. In this line, we bind our keyUp function to a function which executes our search action function. In this event handler, we bind our search link to a click event and execute our search action. And we can see here that each of these calls search action. We also bind our add to cart button to a click function so we can call our add to cart function. Now our add to cart function gets the value of our product ID and our cart. We can see that here. We use the hash and the ID to get the value, and we store it in this variable. The same thing happens for cart. Now here's the Ajax functionality via jQuery. Now the jQuery.ajax method gives us the necessary functionality to make the most flexible type of Ajax request. This is jQuery's low-level Ajax implementation. There are other implementations such as get, post, etc. for higher-level abstractions that are often easier to understand and use but don't offer as much functionality, such as error callbacks. Personally, I like to use this because it gives me greater control of what I'm doing. Notice the first part of this functionality. A string containing the URL to which the request is sent. In this case, it's our data servlet. Now, the type of the data that you're expecting back from the server, if none is specified, jQuery will try to infer it based on the MIME type of the response. So an XML MIME type will yield XML, and JSON will yield JavaScript objects. And if it says 1.4 in the script, it will execute the script, and anything else will be returned as a string. The available types and the result passed as the first argument to your success callback are XML, HTML, script, JSON, JSONP, text, multiple, and also space-separated values. Now the type. The type of request to make, post or get, and the default is get. Note that other HTTP request methods are available such as put and delete and can also be used here, but they're not supported by all browsers. Now the data attribute. Data to be sent to the server. It is converted to a query string, and if not already a string, this will occur automatically. And it's going to be appended to the URL for GET request. The object must be in key value pairs, and if the value is an array, jQuery serializes multiple values with same key based on the value of the traditional setting. So the data I'm going to be passing is product ID, product ID. Now let's look at the success function. This function is going to be called if the request succeeds. The function gets passed 3 arguments: the data returned from the server, formatted according to the data type parameter, which we set as JSON, and a string describing the status. In this instance, we only specify the data variable. So within this method, we first check if the servlet passed us back our redirect. Now remember that if our user is not logged in, we're going to redirect them back to our login screen by calling our redirect function. Our data servlet passes back the redirect JSON name value pair. Notice how we're able to access the value by using dot notation and specifying the name of the JSON variable. Then we call our redirect function. If there's no redirect, we update the add to cart div tag and place a new number in it. This global request I'm going to be using to toggle the presence of the user. Just in case the user immediately clicks the function or the back button again while we are processing our request and our response. Now in this line, we call our jQuery fadeout function to hide the matched elements by fading them to transparent. I remove the HTML within our cart div tag. I add the number to an HTML variable, and then we add the new number to our cart. Then I call the fade in function, and we fade in fast, which is a duration of 600 milliseconds. Now let's go to our complete function. The complete function is called when the request finishes. After success, and error callbacks are executed. The function gets passed two arguments, the jQuery and a string categorizing the status of the request. We check if the status is an error and fire a JavaScript alert for notification purposes. Here's the alert. The error function is the same thing. This function is called if the request fails. And the function receives three arguments. The XHR object, a string describing the type of error that occurred, and an optimal exception object if one occurred. We set our global request to 0 and alert the error. Now let's take a look at our search action function. Okay, first we get a reference to our results div tag. And again, we set up our Ajax, calling the data servlet, using a get method, and we expect JSON to return to us. Now, when our method returns our items in JSON format, we loop through each one and we create in our client the fragment of HTML, which will then be added to our result div tag. Notice how I loop over the data variable and access the JSON values. X is my counter, and then using the dot notation, I reference the name of the JSON values. I append my new HTML fragment to the results container tag. And finally, we fade in our container to display the results to the user. This concludes our discussion of jQuery Ajax Example Part 2.